Coming up in the latest set, the name of which YouTube doesn't want me to say in the first minute of this video, we're getting 4 new Commander Precon, and today we're looking at Blame Game, a red and white Precon focused on a very divisive mechanic, Goad. Our box legend for this deck is Nelly Borca, Impulsive Accuser. This 4-mana human detective is a 2/4 that has vigilance and reads whenever Nelly Borca attacks suspect target creature, giving it menace and making it unable to block. Then, Goad all suspected creatures. Whenever one or more creatures an opponent controls that deal combat damage to one or more of your opponents, you and the controller of those creatures each draw a card. And Blame Game is an apt name for this Precon, because there's going to be a lot of blame thrown around the table. Who should you be upset with, the person that attacked you, or the person that forced your creature to attack? But Goad is a divisive mechanic. I've spoken at length about the problem with Goad, linked up top, and how it's essentially a useless mechanic when you get down to only 2 players. Even more so with Nelly here, as you've made your opponent's creatures harder to block thanks to menace of being suspected. You just better hope that your actions don't come back to bite you. However, as always, there's another brand new legend in Blame Game, and that's the return of fan favorite Razzia Angel, Feather. Feather, Radiant Arbiter, is a 3-mana 4/3 angel with flying and lifelink. She reads, whenever you cast a non-creature spell that targets only Feather, you may choose any number of other creatures that spell could target and pay 2 mana for each. If you do, copy that spell for each of those targets, targeting those creatures. Copies of permanents like auras become tokens. That's a little bit of a mouthful, but Feather keeps some of the qualities of her former incarnation, Feather the Redeemed, and adds in a little bit of Zada Hedron Grinder to the mix. Now, some have been saying she's a much worse version of these other cards. While I'm certain that may appear to be the case, being able to get multiple copies of auras is very, very powerful. Casting an ethereal armor and getting a copy for a few of your creatures is bananas. Even better if they have enters the battlefield effects like a Sage's Reverie for big bursts of card draw. But which one is better? Before we take a look at the Precon as a whole, remember to like and subscribe for more Precon upgrades and deck builds on the channel. First, I want to give some acknowledgement to some of the amazing reprints in the deck. Wizards has stacked it with value, which is what a lot of people have been asking for. From Lauren of the Third Path, which is still in standard but a $7 card, through to Fiendish Duo, which, prior to this Precon, was $35 on its own thanks to scarcity, to Comeuppance at $12, which only had ever seen one printing. There's so much value in this Precon, it is staggering. It also includes Smuggler's Share, a $6 card, Darien King of Keldor, a $5 card, and Ghostly Prison, a $4 card. The reprint value alone in this deck makes it worth grabbing 4 parts. You will be using these cards in other decks, so it makes a great addition to the collection whether you're playing it out of the box, upgrading it, or pulling it apart for use in other decks. But the reprints aren't the only amazing thing about Blame Game. There are some awesome new exclusive cards printed inside too, like the amazing Trouble in Pairs. In my opinion, one of White's best draw engines ever. This 4-mana enchantment reads, if an opponent would begin an extra turn, that player skips that turn instead. Whenever an opponent attacks you with 2 or more creatures, draws their second card each turn, or casts their second spell each turn, you draw a card. Normally, I would have expected this to say triggers only once each turn on it, but to everyone's surprise, there's no cap to the number of cards you can draw with it. And since it's each turn, if an opponent is drawing cards on other players' turns, you draw more cards. Some are already calling this White's Rhystic Study, but I prefer to think of it as Mangara the Diplomat on steroids. This is one of those cards that, once it lands on the battlefield, will very quickly swing the card advantage pendulum unless players play around it. The later in a game it comes down, the better and better it gets too, because the chances of someone having to attack you with 2 or more creatures just goes up, and the number of spells cast by each player goes up each turn too. I hesitate to call cards staples without getting my hands on them and testing them first, but this honestly looks like one of White's greatest tools for card draw we've ever seen. There's no tax involved, it can trigger multiple times each turn, and there's no avoiding every single mode on it. On top of that, we also have the new Hot Pursuit, another enchantment, but this 2-mana machine is a way we solve all of Goad's problems as a mechanic. It says, when Hot Pursuit enters the battlefield, suspect target creature an opponent controls. As long as Hot Pursuit remains on the battlefield, that creature is also goaded. which is basically a free Nelly Borca trigger. But also, at the beginning of combat on your turn, if 2 or more players have lost the game, gain control of all goaded or suspected creatures until end of turn. Untap them, they gain haste. See, the biggest issue with Goad is that once it's down to a one-on-one scenario, Goad does nothing. In this case, at least, you get to alpha strike your opponent by stealing all their goaded creatures every turn and throw them right back at them. This design is fantastic, and I hope we'll actually get to see more like it. Triggering when 2 or more opponents have lost the game is a perfect way to phrase this, and I'd like to see it taken further with caveats of goaded creatures can't attack or block, really changing the dynamic once you're down to a one-on-one game. With the added benefit of also being able to completely wipe out your opponent's remaining creatures with sacrifice effects like Goblin Bombardment or Ashnod's Altar, you can be almost entirely immune to the drawbacks of Goad. Some may argue that it's good Goad has a drawback like that, but there's no point to a mechanic that just does nothing if it works well enough that other players have lost the game. That feels worse than anything else, suffering for performing well. But Hot Pursuit? It is a must-have in any deck based on goading. Along those same lines as Hot Pursuit is Immortal Obligation. This is a simple 2-mana instant that returns a creature from an opponent's graveyard to the battlefield under their control, not yours. It also gets a duty counter, meaning it's goaded but can never attack you or your stuff and can never block your creatures. This is another interesting tool. It's an improvement to Goad as a mechanic, preventing it from biting you in the butt, while also being a very, very strong political tool. Some may balk at ever giving your opponent a resource, and there are some situations where that is true. I really would have loved to see that the creature is also unable to be sacrificed as well. Otherwise, there are a ton of outs to giving them a creature. Black can get rid of it with a Viscera Seer, green to a Greater Good, or red to a Goblin Bombardment. Overall, the flavor is there, the decision-making and political bargaining is there, and the ways around Goad's weakness is there. But it's not the perfect answer and never fits in every scenario. Regardless, I like where the design is at, and I would love to see more cards like it. Next up is a pair of new cards, both with voting. Mob Rule and Prisoner's Dilemma are a pair of new sorceries that get the entire table involved in votes, and I absolutely love cards that make everyone make decisions. Mob Verdict can burn opponents and their creatures, either being a one-sided Pyroclasm or a single-player board wipe, or draw you multiple cards for just 4 mana, with none of those options being bad ever. And Prisoner's Dilemma is a 5-mana sorcery with flashback that can deal a whole lot of damage to a whole lot of players. There's some tricky math here, but I think the best option is to always choose Snitch with this vote. Better to eat 8 damage than risk taking 12. Even if there's a chance you could only take 4, I'm really excited to play this one and try to game the system. But both of these are versatile adds to any deck that triggers off of damage dealt to opponents. Firesong and Sunspeaker love this, and the new Judith Carnage Tyrant too. And so does Neheb the Eternal. Gaining a ton of life or making a ton of mana are always good options. Are they the most competitive cards in the world? No, of course not. Are they fun and creative and incredible storytellers? Absolutely. Expect your most fun friends to play these cards. Last of the new cards is Take the Bait, a 4-mana instant that I'm sure is going to be a blowout machine. It reads, cast only during an opponent's combat. Prevent all combat damage that would be dealt to you and planeswalkers you control this turn, untap all attacking creatures, and goad them. After this phase, there's an additional combat phase. So, it negates an opponent's attack against you and forces them to send all their creatures somewhere else. It's a funny trick that can really suck for other opponents, as they may get attacked again, losing more life and more board presence. Or it may force the attacking creature into an unfortunate scenario of sending their creatures into unfavorable blocks. Either way, it's a win for you. Just be careful, the downside of Goad is readily apparent here. If you just fogged your opponent's Alpha Strike that took out your other opponents too, well, you're just giving them another combat where they can now send everything at you again, achieving essentially nothing for yourself. Regardless, this one is big, and could be a massive blowout. The pre-order price is high right now, but I'd be interested in seeing if it maintains that kind of value, similar to cards like Ink Shield or Arachnogenesis, that they've maintained in past years. People love their fog effects. So the question is, which of the two commanders is better if we're upgrading this precon? Nelly Borca or Feather? They do completely different things, so it's tough to really say. Editing the deck for Feather would require massive changes to take advantage of her ability, where the deck out of the box is closer to what Nelly Borca is looking for, so why don't we take a look at both angles? First, Nelly Borca. While her on-attack trigger is nice, we really want to be enabling her second effect most. It's a group slug group hug effect, drawing you and an opponent cards. This can be, quite often, incentive enough to have your opponents attack each other with at least one creature. It's similar to Edric Spymaster of Trest or Gix Yawgmoth Crater, both incredibly exploitable effects. While they may trigger multiple times, and Nelly only triggers once, and only on opponents' attacks, not yours, this does give us unique advantages and allow us to make more pillow fight style decks. With Ghostly Prison and Windborn Muse already in the list, we could be adding in cards like Norn's Annex and Sphere of Safety to further disincentivize opponents from attacking us. This means Nelly could be passively drawing everyone cards and ensuring we'll fill up on resources. And in reality, there's only a few sources of repeatable Goad in the deck. Agitator Ant and the Impetus Auras on top of your commander, and one or two other cards. If we really want to be preventing ourselves from being attacked, and we do, all it takes is one creature and an opponent to trigger the card draw, meaning everyone else could be swinging at you too. Then, we really want to up the Goad count. Adding in Bothersome Quasit, for example, would allow us to goad a creature each time we cast a non-creature spell. It also has the added bonus of ensuring goaded creatures can't block, so we can goad freshly played creatures to sneak through for damage. Death Kiss is another great way to incentivize opponents to attack each other, giving creatures that attack opponents double power until end of turn, while having a monstrous activation to goad opponents' creatures. And a severely underrated Goad enabler is Geode Rager. Not only is it a good body, 4/3 first strike for 6, providing some defensive or offensive capability, but it also on landfall goads all creatures target player controls. That can result in some massive swings. Grenzo Havoc Raiser is another good addition to the Goad crew too, allowing you to attack into potentially empty boards or into creatures that can't block because they're suspected, and dealing combat damage with a creature allows you to goad a creature the defending player controls for each creature you control that dealt combat damage. It's a defensive and offensive mechanic. I personally love Komainu Battle Armor for a similar effect. Whenever it or the creature you've equipped with it deals combat damage to a player, you goad everything that player controls. Considering it has and gives menace, making the creatures harder to block, it's potentially a way to ensure one player's board is permanently goaded. For some one-time bursts of Mega Goad, I do love the new Taunt from the Ramparts, goading all creatures your opponents control and preventing them from blocking. This is another twist on the Goad mechanic that ensures your creatures are essentially unblockable the turn you cast this, enabling an Alpha Strike or crippling opponents enough that they take each other out on attack. It is beautiful. But maybe my favorite addition would be Baloth Baratil Entertainer. I've expounded my love for this guy before, linked up top, but he perma-goads opponents' creatures with power less than his, meaning suiting him up with any kind of Anthem effect or power-pumping equipment or aura makes it so your opponent's creatures can never attack you unless you're their only opponent left. Bonus for the triggered ability of a goaded attacking or blocking creature dying, making you a treasure too. Trust me, that kind of mana advantage ramps up fast. It also means Baloth is a suitable pivot commander for this strategy, pairing him with a background like Noble Heritage for the ability to pump his power every turn while preventing opponents from attacking you. You get the red and white guts of the deck, but with a more broad spectrum Goad effect in the command zone. That would be my move if I wanted to keep this kind of attack everyone but me theme to the list. But what would I cut to get these cards into the deck? Let's start with anything that's not goading or incentivizing players to attack each other. Winds of Wrath is a board wipe that will hurt you more often than not, and there's not a lot of auras in the deck that you want on your creatures. In the Feather version of this deck, it's a must-have, but here, cut it. Stalking Leonin, Darien King of Keldor, and Ancient Stone Idol care more about you being attacked. but ideally you don't want to be attacked at all in this deck. So this is like inviting a worst case scenario, and that's not productive. Steel Hellkite seems unnecessary here, not playing into any strategy for the deck. It's a flyer for the case of having a flyer rather than any kind of synergy piece or enabler. It's an easy replacement. The new Ransom Note in each of these decks is cute, but really should be your first cut in most of the lists. While it provides us with a one-time Goad effect, we've added in more ways to goad loads of creatures instead. And if we're streamlining the deck's theme, then some of the generic big creatures like Angel of the Ruins, Atali Primal Storm, and Anya Merciless Angel can go too. This helps bring the deck's curve down a bit too, since all the cards we're adding in are in the 4 to 6 mana range. Gideon's Sacrifice and Deflecting Palm are cute oh no buttons in the list as well, but if we're putting up some walls and having opponents swing at each other, they just may not be needed over plain removal spells. A Swords to Plowshares in this deck would be just as good. And I mentioned how fun Prisoner's Dilemma is, and in the right deck it can do a lot of work. But again, if we're trying to consolidate the deck into a unified theme, then it should really be cut. The deck's mana curve out of the box is almost 4 mana on average, so removing these cards that cost 5+ mana would help us bring it down to manageable levels. Now that's what I'd do if this were remaining a Nelly Borca deck. What would I do to make this Feathers deck instead? Let's reset the deck list, putting Feather in the lead, and see if we can't turn this into more of a Boros Enchantress list, shall we? If we want that to be the vibe, Boros Enchantress, then we want to look at a semi-similar Lightpaw's Emperor's Voice. This mono-white legend is an aggressive Enchantress list that doubles up on your auras. Sounds similar? But this one does it for free rather than having to pay like Feather's ability does. So how do we take advantage of that? Well, because we need to pay for copies of our auras, we want to start small. The cheaper our auras, the easier it is to copy them multiple times. We could be discounting our auras with Starfield Mystic, Starnhelm Courser, or Transcendent Envoy. This can make expensive auras much easier to cast and copy. Adding in small enchantments like Ethereal Armor, All That Glitters, and Hyena Umbra are fantastic places to start too. These all give multiplicative bonuses when we get more and more of them from bigger creatures to board wipe protection. Spirit Mantle and Unquestioned Authority are always great ways to make your enchanted creatures unblockable too. And Sage's Reverie, while a little bit costlier, is probably your best draw spell in a deck like this. Very, very helpful. Card draw needs to come from classic Enchantress pieces like SRAM Senior Edificer and Core Spirit Dancer and Mesa Enchantress, though they don't gain effectiveness from getting token copies of the auras you're casting. But you know what does gain benefit from it? Archon of Sun's Grace. It has Constellation, triggers whenever an enchantment enters the battlefield, token or otherwise. That's an excellent way to be paying 5 mana to copy an aura twice and make 3 2/2 flyers for no additional cost. Instant board state. What do we cut from this list if we're making this pivot? Well, we no longer need a lot of the bodies we have in the default list. Some of the same cuts to the Nelly Borca upgrade can apply here too. Ancient Stone Idol, Angel of the Ruins, and Steel Hellkite no longer need to be in the deck if we're building threats instead. Atali, Darien, and Anya are all costing as much as we want to pay for 3 copies of an enchantment instead, and can all go without hurting our game plan. So can a lot of the other goading mechanics. Frontier Warmonger, Vengeful Ancestor, and Agitator Ant can all be removed harmlessly while making room for our new synergy pieces. Spectacular Showdown, Hot Pursuit, and Rite of the Raging Storm are no longer part of our strategy and may actively harm our game plan, making them easy cuts too. You may notice that there's an interesting split with these two commanders. Nelly Borca wants the deck to skew heavier red, with Goad being a red mechanic with white supporting it, where Feather wants the deck to skew white into auras and spell synergies, as most of the theme synergies exist in white, with red being present for some additional effects. And personally, I think this is a good thing. This feels a lot closer to Precon design of an older time, where 2 disparate themes were mashed into a single list, giving players the option of which way they want to lean and which way they really want to upgrade this deck. That makes this a fantastic option to pick up if you want to forge your own list, and one I'd recommend for anyone getting into Commander to begin with. Learn what you like and sculpt your deck accordingly. If you want to check out the full deck list along with my upgrades, check out my sponsor, Moxfield. Moxfield is the greatest deck building platform in the world and makes it easy to review and add cuts with the history feature on every deck. While you're there, be sure to follow my profile too. And while you're here, be sure to check out these other Murders at Karlov Manor brews. If you were inspired to build today, you have to hit that subscribe button, and as always folks, good luck and have fun.